Good afternoon, scholars. Welcome to your last lit class of the week. You made it. You made it to the finish line, and you were running strong through that finish line because if you look at our turn-in rate compared to the other day, we're up 13%. This is really encouraging. I won't spend a lot of time talking about the fact that seventh grade's at 86%, but yeah, 68 is fine, but we know we can do better. Yesterday, you were to submit the assignment that you had 2 days to do, which was just kind of recapping the main characters and events from Act 1, and then also matching up the characters to their descriptions. I'm happy with this turn-in rate. I'm not thrilled with, excuse me, not thrilled with the effort that some of the students had, especially given the fact that you had 2 days. Miss Jenny sent you back your assignments with really specific things that you could improve. Very few students actually took the time to actually improve those guys. There's nothing impressive about people who do the bare minimum, and you're going to find that. But shout out to Jada, shout out to Luis Ruiz, Mirage, students who actually did resubmit with their answers changed and improved. All right. So let's take a look at some of those answers. Take a second right now to make this window smaller so you can pull up your work so that you can compare the two. The first question was, what do we know about the boy on trial? I want to look at Jada's answer here because it was really clear. It was really detailed too. She said, we know that the boy is accused of killing his father. Check. The boy has been tossed around his whole life and has a rough childhood, while his mom dying and his father being in prison. Yep. Not being happy around his, he's not as, it's just her father, Jada. Being happy around his father and always wanting to kill him and hanging out with friends and getting in trouble. Yes, this kid has had it rough and he's gotten to some trouble. Your next question was where you were to list the arguments that were being made against the boy, and then in the next column over, you were to name doubts that were raised about those arguments. Aaliyah did a really great job on here. So 4 of the ones that she listed were, well, I'll do the 3 because I did the top one on the video. She said the old man said he saw the boy run outside a bit after the father died. Yes. And what doubt was raised? The old man would be too slow to possibly be able to get from the room to the door in 15 seconds. Another prosecution testimony, the woman saw the boy stab his father. Actually, I want to skip past this one because Aaliyah, it's clear that you've gone past Act 1, which is fine, but we're not going to get into this one yet. The other fact that she listed was the knife that was stabbed in the father was claimed to be the only knife, the only knife that the shop had of that kind. And we know early on, Juror 8 had the same exact knife that was used, and he said he bought it at the store for $2, meaning that the vendor was lying, right? These are common knives. There's nothing special about that one, which the prosecution swears, look how unique this knife is. He's the only boy that could have had it. So, awesome. Other facts, what were some other facts you could have? Actually, yeah, that pretty much covers most of the key facts from Act 1, right? Yeah. Let's go to the character matching. Oh, another thing you could have raised doubts about was the fact that the boy supposedly yelled, "I'll kill you," meaning that to prove that he did it. And then Juror 8 proves that actually the other jurors proved like I've yelled that before. And then Juror 8, pokes and pokes and pokes at Juror 3 to get him to blow up. Juror 3 yells, "I'll kill you," and Juror says, "You didn't actually mean that, did you?" Right? So that's another doubt that you could have raised about how important that phrase was to the trial. Camila did a great job matching. So if you need to fix your matching answers, do so now so that you are clear as we go into Act 2 on who is who. The elderly, good-natured man is Juror 9. The indifferent man, that means someone who just doesn't care, who doesn't seem doesn't seem to, my bad guys, doesn't seem to believe this trial is worth his time was Juror 7. Juror 8 is the architect who's thoughtful and well-spoken. The foreman is the lead juror in charge. The prejudiced and cruel man is Juror 10. The obnoxious man who works in advertising is 12. The house painter who doesn't tolerate disrespect toward the elderly is 6. Remember, 6 is the guy who sticks up for Juror 9 when Juror 3 is being disrespectful and kind of puts Juror 3 in his place. Juror 11 is the quiet, thoughtful gentleman and an immigrant from Europe. Juror 3 is the middle-aged man with an explosive temper and a bias against teenage boys. Juror 5 is the somewhat timid young man who grew up in a neighborhood similar to the defendant's. And Juror 4, I think this one might have been the trickiest because especially if you're reading this and you're not watching the movies, you can't tell that Juror 4 is very well dressed. You can tell that he's got money. But he's self-confident, wealthy, and intelligent man, the only juror able to explain the facts of the case that lead him to vote guilty. So Juror 4 believes he's guilty throughout the play, but he's able to really he's the one who named out like the 10 plus facts of the case that helped convince him. So he's actually thinking he thinks the boy did it based on all those facts. Today, we're going to start Act 2. And your task of the day is to look for how the author, Reginald Rose, builds in tension to Act 2, right? First off, what is tension? This is a really important term in literature. Tension is that element in a novel that evokes emotions, such as worry, anxiety, fear, and stress on the part of both the reader and the characters in a novel, right? We see tension in movies, we see tension in books, we see tension in this play. It's when you start to feel like, oh boy, you can tell things start to get like it's building to something, to a fight or to something big, and you start to feel anxious, right? That's tension. It takes a really good author to build that tension. And we're going to be paying close attention to what does Reginald Rose write in? What details does he add, or what words does he write that starts to make us feel like, a little bit of stress, the stress is going on in this room. He ended Act 1 at a high point in terms of tension because Juror 3 had just totally lost his cool. The other jurors had to hold him back. He was yelling, I'm going to kill you. Like that was, it was building to that moment. So we're going to pay close attention as Act 2 continues to see how does Reginald Rose keep that tension, right? Because he doesn't bring it down. They all don't hug and make up and, there's no relief. How does he keep us feeling kind of anxious and worried, and also the characters feeling kind of tense and anxious? All right, I'll show you how we're going to do this, and I'll walk you through an example. So we have our tension tracker right here. In this column, we're going to write down what character we noticed something about, whether it's something they do or something they say. We're going to include the key evidence right there. This can be a line, or it could even be stage direction. And then our analysis is where we break down how that evidence proves that the tension, there's still tension in the room, or even that tension's building in the room. So let's pick up on page 57. And I'm going to do my favorite way of listening and reading at the same time. I'm going to pull up the audio link to page. We start about 59:40. It can be hard to get this thing to go right to where you want it. So I'm going to start 10 seconds ahead. And I'm going to be looking for anything where I can pick up on some tension, something that would make me or the character feel worried or anxious, or like there's pressure or anger building. Come on. Okay, come on. Yes.
To Groupthink in 12 Angry Men by Reginald Rose, this week on LA Theaterworks. In hour 1 of 12 Angry Men, In a hot Manhattan jury room, a dozen jurors hash out the details of a murder case.
The old man who lived downstairs heard the kid yell out, "I'm gonna kill you."
Yeah.
Only one juror remains unconvinced.
They proved it a dozen different ways. Would you like me to list them for you?
No.
Then what do you want?
Nothing. I just want to talk.
Well, what's there to talk about?
Some of his arguments fall on deaf ears.
What do you want, X's or O's?
I'll be X's.
You're playing tic-tac-toe.
Hey, wait a minute!
This isn't a game!
And as the hot day wears on, the tempers run short.
A guy who talks like that to an old man ought to really get stepped on,
Hey,
you know?
keep your hands off me!
Until they reach a boiling point.
You're a sadist.
Let go of me, I'll kill him! I'll kill him!
You don't really mean you'll kill me, do you?
And now, Hour 2 of 12 Angry Men by Reginald Rose, starring Jeffrey Donovan, Robert Foxworth, Dan Castellaneta, and Hector Elizondo. Produced by LA Theatre Works.
Looks like it's gonna rain.
Well, yeah. I suppose someone has to start it off again.
It's getting late. What do they do? I mean, do they take us out to a restaurant for supper?
Well, how do I know?
I wonder if they let us go home in case we can't finish tonight. I got a boy with the mumps. You know, he's out to here. The wife says he looks like Khrushchev.
Pardon. This fighting. This is...
I'm going to pause right there. If you don't know what that Khrushchev means, Nikita Khrushchev was the premier or the leader of the Soviet Union, who used to be, which was what Russia was, which used to be our biggest rivals, and he had all kinds of like bumps on his face. So that's who he's talking about when he said he looks like Khrushchev. I want to look at that line because you may not have picked up on that, but as a father, this line jumped out to me. So here's why. First, let me start to fill this out. So who's the character? Focusing on the second juror. It's the evidence. I'm looking for evidence again, a key line that I think shows some tension. He said, I wonder if they let us go home. I wonder if they let us go home in case we can't finish tonight. I've got a boy with mumps. Mumps, guys, is a sickness we don't see very often now because you guys get shots for it when you're a baby. But it's pretty uncomfortable and gives kids fevers and bumps all over. It's pretty bad. So this is my evidence. And it's from page 8. Sure you cite what page it comes from. I gotta do my analysis. I gotta break down how this piece of evidence does show some tension. If juror number 2, if he's asking about when can we go home, he's got a boy with bumps. This makes me think that if second juror has a sick child at home, the stress level might have been high before the day before they even entered the jury room, right? He's already had this on his mind all day, right? The stress will rise even higher the longer he has to stay as they make their decisions. This might cause him to lose temper towards other jurors. So I see that Rose has purposely written in this detail about this character that's going to cause this character to feel kind of anxious, which, if you're reading closely, you start to feel that too, right? So, this is an example of Rose adding in these little details to build the stress and the tension of the scene as he builds up to like something big that you know is coming, like a big blow up or fight or something like that. Okay. So, you're going to just find, you might find a lot of different examples. Um, just find the three that are the best for you. Okay. So you might, on a sheet of paper, as you're taking your notes, you might jot down, little parts of quotes and what page they're on, but then you'll go through and pick which ones are the three strongest. Your very strongest one is going to go towards your focus question. And the focus question is, how does Rose maintain tension in the beginning of Act 2? So how does he maintain tension? Okay, here is our feedback for the day. When I answer this question, you're going to have to make sure you zoom out for your assertion. Your evidence is an example of what you're going to say in your assertion or a bigger idea. Okay, so you don't get too specific with your evidence right in your assertion. Here's what I mean by that. I'm not going to say Rose maintains tension at the beginning of Act 2 by showing us that Juror 2 has a sick son. That's too specific. I need to zoom out. Juror 2 having a sick son on his mind is an example of how he and maybe lots of the other jurors begin to grow impatient as the deliberation drags on, right? So the bigger idea, the zoom out, is jurors growing impatient with how long this conversation is going on. Rose maintains tension in the beginning of Act 2 by demonstrating how the jurors are growing more and more impatient with conversations, with the lengthy conversation. For example, second juror as a child has a sick child on his mind. Has a sick child whom he is anxious to get home to. Okay? And then I'll put in my quote, and then I'll break down really my analysis here. So again, the feedback for the day is to zoom out for your assertion and then use your evidence as an example of that. Don't get too specific in your assertion. I didn't say he maintained tension by showing us that Juror 2 has a sick kid. I zoomed out. Him having a sick kid and wanting to get home, what's that an example of? It's an example of how the jurors are becoming impatient. So I'm talking about all the jurors in the kind of bigger idea. Then I'm going to go more specific with my example, and my analysis is going to connect the two. My analysis for this one will prove how having a sick kid at home will make the juror more impatient. So then I connect it back to my assertion. Okay, so don't get too specific on your assertion. Zoom out for the bigger picture. Your evidence is an example of that bigger picture. So don't just write about one juror in your assertion. Write about any of them, how all of them might be feeling like this, or any of them could feel like this, and then give your example from the one specific juror. Okay, I hope that helps. It should help if you're really paying attention to my feedback. It's showing up in students' writing because it's clear, and it's clear that you're using my feedback and you're using this time at home to become a better reader, writer, thinker. All right. Have a great weekend, guys. You have until Sunday at 10 p.m. to submit this assignment. And make sure you go to office hours today so that you can discuss this with Miss Jenny and other scholars. And make sure you get your 30 minutes Lexia. All right. I'll see you guys Monday. Have a good weekend.